Good afternoon, everybody. You're all very welcome to our webinar this month on the topic of building resilience through seasonal change. So delighted to have the attendees coming in there for our discussion today. So my name is Cillian and I am the Development Officer with Mental Health Ireland. So I cover the Midwest region of Clare, Limerick, and North Tipperary. So we have a good panelists today joining us with Noeleen, Karl, and Teresa. So I'll be introducing them in a second. They're all my colleagues in Mental Health Ireland. So a little bit on just a background of what today will look like, the webinar. So the outline we really on this topic is to explore how we can build resilience through seasonal change and share practical tools to manage through these times of transition and change over the coming few months into the winter months as well. So I feel it's a really topical area to focus on, and we'll have questions around what is resilience. We'll focus on connection as well, and we'll look at how we can prepare now in the lead up to those seasonal changes as well. So just a little bit of housekeeping as well. The webinar will be about an hour. There is a Q&A button at the end of your screen as well if you're on a phone or a laptop, and you can either preload some questions if needed, or else if you have a question throughout the webinar, feel free to ask as well, and we'll hopefully be able to answer some of the questions that come in. Other than that, the webinar will also be recorded will be recorded and will be put up on the Mental Health Ireland YouTube channel. So we'll have that up by the end of the week, hopefully, so people can rewatch again. So that's basically it, I think. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to invite my panelists to come on. So Noeleen, Karl, and Teresa, if you'd like to turn on your cameras, and we'll just do a round of introductions. You're very welcome. So thanks for taking the time to come on to this webinar today. Hopefully we'll have a great discussion around the topic of building resilience through seasonal change. So Karl, I'll pass it over to you just to do an intro. That's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. Yeah, I'm a development officer in Dublin North, Kildare, and West Wicklow. Happy to be here today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karl. Great to have you. Noeleen, I'll go to yourself next.
Hi, Killian. Hi, folks. It's lovely to be here today. Killian, thank you so much for the invite. My name is Noeleen Wills. I'm Development Officer and I look after South Dublin, East Wicklow. So Karl and I are like yin and yang in a way in terms of the areas that we look after. I'm also a therapist and I'm incredibly passionate about all things mental health, well-being, and recovery related as well.
Lovely. Thanks, Noeleen. Thanks for coming along. Teresa, pass it to yourself.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I am based in Mayo and Roscommon out in the West. And yeah, I'm really interested in recovery. I have lived experience myself. And so I'm really passionate about learning more new ways and sharing kind of experiences. And I also write poetry. I daren't call myself a poet, but so if I wax lyrical a bit, bear with me, everybody. And it's lovely to see you all, guys. And you're very welcome, everybody. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Teresa. It's great to have you here as well. So we will kick off with the first question, and I suppose it's around resilience and maybe having a kind of, in your own words, a definition around it. So I might ask the question, Noeleen, will I come to yourself first? And resilience, what does it mean to you?
Sure, Killian. So I suppose resilience is one of those words that we use an awful lot, especially in our world. And I think it can be really helpful to give thought and consideration to what does it mean to me as an individual. So for me personally, um, I think it's about adapting, but also I suppose the keep on going. Because as we know with life, it's absolutely going to throw curveballs at us. I wish at times, when we get to those nice places, like say during the summer when we're heading to the airport, everything is beautiful because you're heading off. And it's a great day, but actually, life is going to do a little bit of that to us. So for me, resilience is very much about being able to adapt to those curveballs coming because they're going to come. Again, by the nature of life, we're going to experience tough times. There are going to be challenges. And so it is very much about adapting, about leaning into what I know about myself and being able to utilize, I suppose, some of those tips or tools or wellness tools that I might have. And so having that knowledge, to keep on going as well. So being able to just continue, I've a little bit of I suppose, a bit of a mantra, when things can be quite tough. My mantra is just keep putting one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other. Because some days it's just, for me, it's been about getting out of the bed and just putting one foot in front of the other regardless. of having a plan or having the bigger picture or whatever that looks like. And also learning and then growing from that. So being able to reflect on some of those tough times, but actually being able to then make some amendments. So for me, it's a combination of different things.
Lovely, that's great. I really like what you captured, the adaptation of things and being able to go through things step by step, day by day as well. So I really like that, Noeleen. So thanks for that. Teresa, I might come to yourself if you have any thoughts around it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And again, I just have to apologize. The dog is snoring a little bit louder now. So just be aware of that nobody's fallen asleep or anything. It's just my doggy. So when I used to do training, I used to say to the people that I was talking to, when we got to resilience, I say, oh, look, if I throw a ball at the wall, what happens? And they would be like, oh, it bounces back. And it's funny because I don't really believe that anymore. I feel like that's a toughness. Whereas I'm leaning in a bit more to what Noeleen's saying. I'm thinking about flexibility. So that idea of a reed blowing in the wind and bending with it, so that it doesn't break. And I think that is toughness is all kind of self-will and kind of drive. Whereas resilience is something I think that we build every single day if we take a moment. So what I mean by that is we're driven in the mornings often, and we're driven sometimes by resistance, really. Well, that's what I find anyway. So I'm getting out of bed and I don't really want to get up. I'm a bit tired and I got to shove down a coffee and I'm eating breakfast and I'm legging it out the door and I'm getting to the traffic lights and they're red. And so it snowballs that kind of resistance and frustration from my point of view. Whereas with resilience, if I take a moment in my day and I stop at those traffic lights and I accept they're red, and instead of leaning on the horn or giving out about somebody else and the way they're driving, I take a breath. I have just that moment to reframe and to just think about breathing, being present, and not deciding my day is going to be bad and I'm going to be cross and I'm going to be snappy and I'm going to give out to myself. Do you know what I mean? So, from my point of view, I think resilience is built every day in the moment if we are aware. And I think the cognitive kind of appraisal theories and neuroplasticity, all those studies would back that up in terms of building it into your brain as a habit.
It's really good, Teresa. I like the
Thanks.
idea of like taking a breath and reframing just to kind of give yourself a bit of focus and the self-awareness. But that's difficult in the moment to do when you may be frustrated with something. But I think it's practice. And like you said, with the resilience day today, it's a constant building on it as well. So thanks for your insights on that. Karl, I'll come to yourself. That's all right. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Cillian. Yeah. I suppose a lot of my background is from a sporting background, so playing soccer and doing some running. Some of my analogies you might hear today might be sporting related, so it's one thing I definitely have a crossover with. But I suppose when I do think of the word resilience, if you look at definitions and stuff like that, I would think of inner strength, and I would think of that bounce back piece that Teresa's talking about there, and around the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, there's a lot of heavy stuff happening in the world right now. And it's how we look at it. And I suppose just to touch on Teresa's point, it's about taking it from your perspective. Somebody cut you up on the street, or someone cut you up in the car. What are they going through? So you look at it from their perspective. You think about maybe what are they going through right now, and should I then take on their energy and then become annoyed and have a bad day based on one little action that happens from someone else? So it's kind of having it's having that inner strength. It's having that, I suppose, that Teflon approach of someone else's activities or behaviors can't affect me. But I suppose it's a way about, I think again back to the word resilience, about moving forward. So, what can I do today that's going to help me? What can I do today that's going to bring me forward in the direction that I'm looking to go in? And, if you are a goal setting type person, are you sticking and aligning to your goals and, for the day, for the week, for the month? So it's a real case for me of moving forward. And I suppose the one thing I would think always reflect on is that it's a skill we can build and it's a skill we can learn. Resilience, it's not something we're literally born with out of the cot. It's something we can definitely build on. So yeah.
That's brilliant, Carol. I like that. And just the moving forward piece and even the questions that you ask yourself, the reflective questions, how can I move forward today and everything else, like just to kind of pause in the middle of the day to ask those questions and then see where it can take you from there. So I like that. So it leads me nicely on. Any final thoughts on that resilience? Are we happy to move on? Yeah, all good. Yeah, Perfect. So the question I'm going to ask now is what can we do to help build our resilience at this time of year, coming into, I suppose, the seasonal of autumn, winter, and the kind of darker evenings and whatnot? Is there anything we can do or any tools that you do to help build your own resilience or strategies as well? So Noeleen, I'll go to yourself first if that's okay.
Sure, Cillian. So I think it's a really good time of year to actually have a discussion like this because I think traditionally, and I'm going to speak from the eye perspective on this one. So I know for me, I struggle a little bit more with the less light coming into the darker evenings, coming into the darker mornings. There's more traffic on the roads. There's a little bit more, I'm even noticing it, I suppose, since the schools go back, there's a little bit more of a frenzy in a way, as in like people are busy again. And you know, we're coming into our busy time as well in terms of World Mental Health Month as well next month. And there's just a lot going on. And so I suppose something that I find really helpful is that I know that about myself. And so I know some of my triggers can be those darker evenings. I remember back in February, I don't know if anybody remembers that we had 20 days straight of grey skies. And then I was wondering why I was like dragging myself around. I had very little motivation and there was this heaviness almost. And I suppose I would equate some of this time of year, especially when the grey skies are a real big trigger for me. Not so much the darkness, but the grey skies. So I'm really mindful that there's certain tools that I will lean into. And for instance, I'll make sure to get out during the day so that I get some kind of daylight and hopefully some kind of vitamin C, even if it is getting, you know, the early morning light in the morning. And then there's also something again about me being able to control my environment. So I would use a lot of like different lamps. I know some people have mentioned, you know, the SAD lamps, the seasonal affective disorder lamps. I know I have one. I find it very useful, especially just to take that grey. And I would have that on perhaps during the day if there is very little light. But then also in the evenings, like I really lean into the likes of like soft tone lighting, um, also candles and snuggly things like hot water bottles and you know slippers and fleece pajamas and like so for me there's something about really leaning into that comfort piece because I think traditionally you know our bodies were meant to slow down as we come into the winter months. We're meant to go inward a little bit more, and I think with the way society is that doesn't really support that. So actually, I'm quite mindful about that's on me in a way to really lean into that and to mind that for me. And then I still get the odd days, but you know, by and large, I suppose it helps me navigate some of the winter months coming in.
Brilliant, and I totally relate on the grey skies. It'd be similar to that, what you mentioned, but I think having different tools or things that we can do to offset that, like again, a bit of sunshine in the morning or a bit of daylight even at some
Mm.
stage of the day as well is really important. Carol, I'll come to yourself next if that's okay on the question. So how,
Yeah,
that's all right?
absolutely.
Perfect.
I really do feel like it's kind of like a time of the year where, you know, you're kind of saying goodbye to the heat. Now, I know we live in Ireland where the heat is, you know, it's indifferent, right? We've had our summer back in whenever it was, I don't know, May, and then we had an extra bit here thrown in. But it's really a case of that. I put that into the way I look at it is, you know, say goodbye to the heat to a certain extent, prepare for the cold. So it's a real case of, you know, getting ready for that kind of there was the less daylight. So therefore, you know, maybe you're up in the morning, and I suppose from a sporting perspective, maybe the night before you put your gear out, but even from just getting up and being out and about, have your have your clothes ready for the morning, have them on the landing, have them somewhere in your house where you're ready to go and you're out to get that daylight. So get out, get the daylight, get as much of that crisp, cold air as you possibly can. You might even get a bit of sunshine in the October, November, December months. And then, like Noeleen said, it's like getting ready for that kind of cozy. 4 o'clock onwards, the light goes down, the dark kicks in, and then they turn the heat on and come indoors and, rest and be okay. Like, so trees shed their leaves. Like my garden's full of leaves right now, and I gotta clean up those leaves and give them back to the council like, because they planted the trees in the first place outside my house. But it's kind of like that moment where the trees are shedding their leaves. So we're okay to rest. We have time to rest. And then I suppose just to add on top of that, I suppose there's also the other aspect which is definitely something I'm aware of, and hopefully everybody else takes it in consideration. Is we're now reflecting on maybe the year that's been. So October, November, December, we're now thinking, okay, what was the year that just was? And we might have had some big event in our life, or something has gone good or bad for us in the year that's been. And now it's a case of like, let's reflect back on that year and, think how it went for us, and maybe then also plan for the future, plan for next year coming up. So it's definitely a time for reflection, it's a time for rest, and it's a time for managing that daylight as much as you can in the day, the green and the blue space, get outdoors, and then be ready to snuggle down in the evening time.
Brilliant, Karl. I like the idea of the reflection period over the coming months as well, just to see what has been done in the year and what can be done next year as well, to kind of pause and reflect as well. So that's lovely. Thanks for that. Teresa, will I come to yourself?
Yeah, I wouldn't think I'd have a huge amount to add really, because I think I think Noeleen and Karl have really covered it. I think maybe to sum up in a way where they were with it, it isn't last minute. Like when I spoke first about it, and I think when we all did, for me, it is kind of resilience is built in. It's not something you improvise, so it's a scaffolding in advance. And I think that requires preparation, and I think both of you spoke really well about the grey skies, and I think they can be even worse. They're very heavy, than the pouring rain or the snow or the ice. In fact, you get those beautiful blue skies where you get, which is particularly cold and sharp, can actually be very joyous. But again, the preparation piece, having the warm layers, thinking about what you're eating, the nourishing meals. And I think, keeping an eye on the carbs, because, we do go down that route of comfort food, I think, big time. The daily rituals and habits, I mean, both Noeleen and Karl spoke about that in terms of light exposure. The circadian rhythms and mood are definitely regulating that. And if we're not getting enough of it, we're going to experience lower mood. So it's really important to get out when there's light, and it doesn't have to be. And again, that's the preparation piece around having your layers, having your waterproofs. Like, it takes around 66 days to form a habit. And I think what we're trying to do is avoid motivation and stick with having the things we need at hand. So whether it's a buddy system, whether it's getting tech to support you rather than take you away from life, whether it's having your boots and your overalls, or whatever you're wearing out by the door, all of that good stuff to ensure that you have self-compassion as well on the days where you don't sustain the habit, and that we go again. So that'd be my take.
Brilliant, Teresa. I really like what you're capturing, but I just do when you're talking about mood, and I suppose maybe Nolan was kind of touching on energy as well. How do you notice, I suppose, in yourself or other people, how seasonal changes can affect people's, I suppose, we'll start with mood and maybe energy as well. Is there any kind of thoughts around that? Do you notice in yourself, or do you notice in other people that maybe people are more drained around the winter's time? Around that, Teresa, do you want to come in, or even Noeleen, on that if you want to? Yeah, perfect, Teresa. Thank you. Grant, yeah, no
Sorry,
worries. You're Grant,
sorry about
no.
that. Yeah, I think the lack of light is huge. And I do think that I don't know, even in the last 2 weeks, it's just started. Now I'm getting up a little bit earlier. I'm getting up about 6:30 because my daughter's doing a kind of slightly early shift. And so it was very immediate, from the moving from 5 a.m. to like 6:30, and suddenly it's dark, and it's dark at 7 now, and it's getting dark later. And that's a real shock to the system for me. And I know that there's numerous studies where people, a percentage of people are affected by SAD, seasonal associated disorder, and it is linked to a disruption in our serotonin and melatonin levels. So it does disrupt our sleep. It does disrupt our biological rhythms, and that's a fact. And I think, in terms of addressing that, we have to think about exercise and light ourselves, and we have to really capitalize on those. Um, from my point of view, and this is where I probably, you might be rolling your eyes, but I really feel that I talked about resistance earlier, and I genuinely feel that that's one of my big challenges in recovery, resistance. And I have a higher power. I do go down that road because I feel very alone otherwise. And I have other people who I talk to in recovery, who we share very honestly about where we're at. And for me, that's a game changer, rigorous honesty about what's going on for you. So one of the things I practice is attention. I suppose Kaplan would call it attention restoration, but I would just call it like a taking notice. So I would really lean into natural beauty and trying to see the world through the lens of winter and accepting it as it is. So, the bare branches are black and they're against the sky and they're stunning. And, the soil is resting, but the roots are underneath and they're regenerating. I do genuinely think about things. I do look at the rain for patterns as well. A friend of mine took a photograph the other day, and I swear to God, every one of us thought it was a bird outside a window, but it wasn't. It was actually the way the rain had fallen and shaped into a bird. It was absolutely stunning. But, that kind of thing for me is important because it brings me closer to nature, and I think tech removes us from nature and we're in it a lot, so we don't see ourselves connected properly anymore. And yet we're organically part of this world. So for me, we need to move with those rhythms. I hope that's not too airy fairy, but I genuinely feel that's true.
Love it, Tris. The take notice piece really important, even with nature or ourselves. So I love that. That's great. Even Noeleen, were you going to come in there on any thoughts on it? And Karl, I come to yourself
Just
then if you have any
just to
additional
pick up
thoughts. Thanks. Yeah.
just to pick up on one, and actually, Tracy, you tipped into it there, because I think as well, the struggle can be real coming into the winter months. As Teresa mentioned there, with less light, we don't make as much serotonin. With more darkness, we make more melatonin, right? So that makes us, in a way, the serotonin kind of can bring us a little bit down. The melatonin makes us want to sleep more. So there's a whole biological response that's happening. And I suppose what I do want to say is go gentle. Go really gentle. Do you know? Because everything gets a little bit tougher. And what I mean by that is we're not meant to be out there doing, like we are during the summer because like that, we've loads more light, we've loads more sunshine, we've loads more vitamin D. So we're being supported and biologically we're being supported. So we're meant to actually calm down a little bit. And I think especially with the demands, as I mentioned earlier on, in terms of life and the busyness and all the go, 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 and it just seems to be busier and more hectic. And I'm even seeing it now in terms of, I know, Tracy, you mentioned, tech, but even like with our inboxes are busier. Even WhatsApp has gotten busier now. Can't even get down through WhatsApp messages. So it's like this constant bombardment. But actually, where are we in all of that? And so I suppose that's what I just want to say about the go gentle, because we can go, 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 but actually at what cost? And for me, then that's when my well-being can be compromised. So I suppose I just wanted to say that about the go gentle piece, I think.
I love it. Yeah, that's great, Noeleen. Go gentle. Really, really good. Thanks for that.
Mm.
Karl, have you any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I just love the fact, Noeline, you mentioned about the serotonin and the melatonin, because that's one of the things I have written down here in front of me is, and this will be for myself and for people I'm my loved ones and my friends and my family, tired. So we tend to be slightly more tired in the season, right, in the winter, and then maybe less motivated. And then on the back of that, then we might start leaning towards comfort foods. We might withdraw socially. We might, all of a sudden we find ourselves maybe in a slightly bit of isolation, perhaps. It's that kind of sadness piece that kicks in. And with that, then I suppose, depending on the type of person you are, it's like we're talking about getting outdoors. We're talking about getting as much green and blue as you can, get outdoors, get the sky and get the earth. It's around if you are that type of person who can motivate yourselves, whether it's you're out with a walking group or you're joining whatever group you fancy joining to get that activity, great. If you can do it on your own, great, or do it with a colleague, great. Buddy up, the whole buddy system thing for me has always been something that's been very positive, whether that's a running, walking friend or whatever, going to any activity really. And then I suppose, so yeah, so essentially that's really it. And then maybe join a group, just get out there and maybe join someone that can pull you along. And as Noeline said, the WhatsApp groups can be plus or minus, they can be good or bad, right? But then I suppose the WhatsApp groups that encourage you to come and join them, and maybe it's take up a look for a new winter activity, maybe join a photography club that goes out at daytime or nighttime and takes pictures and use technology to your advantage, and all of a sudden you're taking pictures of beautiful nature and you can analyze them and then go back and have a conversation over a cup of tea or coffee and analyze them. So there's a lot to it there. I think the group have spoken very well about it. It's just around what works for you, what's best for you.
Brilliant, Karl. I like it. And even around the buddy system, just when we're not feeling 100% on a particular day, at least we can have someone to lean on to get us up and getting out for a walk or for something in nature. So, yeah, that's really, really good. Happy to move on to the next question. Yeah, all good. So, the next question is, what role does connection with others have during this time of transition? So, the connection with others. Noeleen, will I start with yourself? Would that be okay? Thanks. And just before you start, actually, I'm just going to preempt if there's any questions from the attendees. We have a good few attendees, so please feel free to ask a question in the Q&A function at the bottom of your phone or laptop, and we'll try and get some of the questions answered throughout. So thanks, and thanks, Noeleen.
Yeah, sorry, Cillian. I think connection is absolutely vital. You know, we're not born to live isolated in our own little worlds. And as much as I love my own company and I love my own time, I think it's also really important to be able to reach out and build connections. And building connections can also support resilience as well. And I find especially, I'm smiling because I live in an apartment complex. And moving in here, I had no idea actually that I would make so many friends and have so many neighbors that we have our own WhatsApp group now and we connect, but we do a lot of things during the winter. And one of the things that we do is we actually host. We go to each other's places and we host and we have, bit of fun, we connect. And I suppose with neighbors, I would never have met people, say traditionally through like say my work or the areas where we would have similar interests. So we've all very different interests. But actually I'm even smiling talking about it because it just brings that lovely warm feeling. So for me, connection is vital because um it's about, I suppose, sharing with others. Now, whether that's or not, we break bread because like that, so we love to cook and stuff like that. But actually, it could also be about connecting with strangers. So if I'm out and about and I could be down the town, let's say, and even connection can be a smile with somebody. So there can be the formal connections, like the work connections, like let's face it, we all work together, we've our weekly check-ins and stuff and we connect that way. But it can also be those informal or informal connections as well. And like I say, they can be random. And some of the best conversations, chats, or times that I've connected have been those total random ones where I'm in super value or I'm down a little. Do you know what I mean? And I suppose that is preceded a little bit by motivation because, like that, when we come into these darker months, is it easier for me to perhaps light a candle and sit on my couch? Absolutely. And sometimes that's really good. But if that's going into the fourth, fifth, or sixth evening, I need to take note and I need to consider actually maybe I will get out and maybe people aren't around and that's okay too. Might be linking to a family, could be on the WhatsApp or it could be, conversation. So we can connect in very different ways. But and I suppose what I'd love to do is encourage people to consider like what ways might you connect in and how might some of that support you heading into the some of the darker evenings moving forward.
Brilliant, Noeleen. Yeah, it's just food for thought for people that are attending just on ways to connect, whatever they're doing at the moment or what they can do going forward in the times of change so through the season. So, Carol, will I come to yourself on the question? What role does connection with others have during this time of
Yeah,
transition? Thanks.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when I hear connection, I do get a bit giddy, a bit like Noeleen. And I think connection is what we talk about the five ways to well-being, and connect is one of them. I suppose there's two examples maybe I could share that are close to my heart and myself. I suppose the men's group that myself and my friends set up, and you folks know about this. We set it up in March, and it was kind of like, will we set it up? Why do we set it up? What if it doesn't work? What if only two people turn up? What if nobody turns up? March was cold. It's going to be chilly. Will people wear the right clothing? And anyhow, long story short, 6 months later, we set it up, and every single Tuesday night on the north side of Dublin, we have 12 to 16 to 18 men walking around together. So the connection piece on that will be I met a gentleman who lives around the corner from me and he's not working. He has he had an accident a couple of years ago. He's got an injury to his neck. So I met him at this in the Centra and I said, hey, you could probably pop down to our group on next Tuesday, whatever, see you there. And he didn't turn up the first Tuesday, but he turned up last night. And straight away he meets two people that he already knows, and it's like, oh my God! And but what really got me, I love about this was that, and this is probably me just being from the heart, is that we walked home together, and he basically said to me, "Hey, I thought this was going to be, tell us about your job. How did you get on today?" And he thought it might be a bit high hitting, as in, "Tell me, what did you do today?" But he's retired now. He's got an injury to his neck, like I said. But he felt so connected. He felt it was just easy going. There was a nice flow to it. It was a nice, easy connection. So there we go. But I suppose the other connection I'll share with you is my wife does a mindfulness class in the local parish centre, and she's been doing that for about 18 months. But out of that, this she's connected to the teacher, and she's connected to all the people there. There's a writer, there's a poet there. And she connected them with herself, I suppose, which is an interesting one, where she's now become an artist, and she has these ideas came out of her head from that mindfulness. So there's the whole connect piece. There's much more to it, and I won't take up much more time here, but chatting about it. But it's close to my heart. It's something I've always been a fan of, is reaching out and connecting. I suppose to answer the connection piece and what I feel it means is, I feel it's number one, it's vital. Number two, you feel less alone. And number three, it's like you feel like you're seen. So you're able to share those little small nuggets, those big events in your life, those small things, little things. Like, going to the park run on a Saturday for me would be a connection piece. And you feel heard, seen, and you have your cup of tea, cup of coffee, and you feel good after, right? So yeah.
That's great, Karl. And even just the example of the man that you said, like that conversation, just it's the beauty of having a conversation that leads onto something, that he joined the group and he's connected to other people that he knows now and probably will continue on with your group as well. So it's lovely. One conversation can lead to so much. So that's
Yeah.
great. Teresa, I'll go to yourself if that's okay, and then we'll go on to the next question.
Yeah, again, I won't labor it now because it's pretty much covered by both my colleagues. And I think what might be just interesting to drill down in is what something that Noeleen said, which is actually evidence-based around weaker connections. And there has been research done to show that just saying hi to somebody at the checkout and having a few words with them can have just a massive impact in terms of, lifting your mood and in turn lifting their mood. And then that's something that can be passed on and is more likely to then ripple out into, so you can't even see the positivity of just making that effort and smiling, engaging with somebody. And again, I think we mentioned, didn't we, the delivery guy, the postman, the guy who is doing the DPD. I think I've just said that. Whoever it is in your daily life, just reaching out, smiling, connecting with them. That piece, I think, is underestimated because it's the stranger effect and it's the weaker connection, but actually it's as impactful as your friends and your family, which is, I think, fascinating. And connection's a fundamental human need. We need it from when we're born, basically, from when we're babies. And I think I mentioned before leveraging tech in your favor. So tech is the thing that actually can pull us away from connection and nature and, acceptance in a way. It can we can lean into more of our resistance and being alone and just fighting what's going on. Whereas you can actually use tech to support you, whether it is that overloaded WhatsApp group and finding out what's going on and where people are meeting up, or whether it's even using your phone. I think I talked about the bird earlier in the water, capturing images and sharing them with people. There's a million powerful ways, posting really positive stuff. If you are on Insta or Facebook, I know it gives me a lift. I love an animal. And I always think that that's, send me cats or send me dogs, and they lift the mood. So, those are just other little ways maybe to add on and turn around something maybe that is working against us a little bit. But I think just the guys covered it really well.
Brilliant, Teresa. And I like even what you're saying about the connection with the delivery man or something like that. It's the unseen positive ripple effect that you can have on a person that goes beyond yourself, and you wouldn't know if he's continued on and spread more kindness throughout the day as well. So that's what I capture from that. So that's great. Happy to move on. I think there's a question there actually in the Q&A, so I might come to it there. So the question is, would the panel have any thoughts or advice on sensory issues, feeling cold or even feeling anxious about some things like weather events, maybe storms, for example? And that's a question. And would anyone want to take that one or any thoughts around it?
Sorry,
Noeleen or
can you
Teresa?
Again, would you mind
Yes.
repeating it,
Yeah, I
Cillian?
will, of
Just
course.
that
Yeah.
was
So
unexpected.
would the panel have any thoughts or advice on sensory issues, feeling cold or even feeling anxious about some things like weather events, maybe storms, for example? So I don't know, does anyone want to capture that?
I can throw a few bits, and
Yeah,
I
go
think
for it,
Noeleen
Teresa.
is
Yeah,
going to join as
perfect.
well.
Yeah.
They're just off the top of my head. I think it's understandable, and I think there's a lot caused. And I remember at one year I had a Jeep, a four-wheel drive Jeep, and I had three women phone me up going, Teresa, are you going by my house? Will you pick me up? And it was really quite a thin layer that was on the ground. And I was fairly taken aback and had to chat to them, and they just hate driving when there's any kind of frost on the road. Now, to be fair, I was in a bulletproof vehicle, but I actually genuinely mean this. It wouldn't have been something that would have bothered me, and weather events don't tend to, but hype does. And I do think everyone here, and I'm not minimizing the effects of it, but I think that we have been through several threats of storms where it has been really hyped. And I do think that's part of this as well, well-being. I try and listen to the news once a day at lunchtime. And I do that because it's too much for me in the morning. It sets me up too negatively. And at night, it's sort of before my sleep time. But I do want to catch up on what's going on. So I try to do it at midday. And that is a practice that I really preach to other people when I'm in trainings. And I think that's where an awful lot of the anxiety comes from, the build up, the threat. The reality is often much less. Now, saying that, part of my house came off in the last storm. So, realistically, it can be an issue as well. But I think, like anything, pacing yourself in the information and really trying to just stick with the facts and doing what you can to kind of proof your house and yourself, making sure that you're not in it, and being realistic about getting online and putting boundaries in with work colleagues and friends about not traveling. You know what I mean? All of that good stuff is about keeping ourselves safe and, not putting ourselves out there and putting ourselves at risk.
Yes, thanks, Noeleen. Or thanks, Teresa. Noeleen, sorry, were you going to come
Yeah,
in there as
can I
well?
add
Yeah,
to
thanks,
that?
Willie.
No,
Yeah,
can I add to that?
absolutely.
Because I think as well, there's I think that question was in relation to anxiety around storms and stuff like that. So I'm wondering then, are there some practical things then that might be helpful for the person to perhaps check into? The likes of, say, house insurance, car insurance, that type of stuff when it comes to storms, because the nature of it is, and what we've seen is the weather has deteriorated. I hold an anxiety around storms, especially where my folks live. They've had a lot of roof damage over the past year or two, and already I'm like, oh God, we're coming into the bad weather again. And I thought of that. So I do hold an anxiety around that as well. And I suppose what supports me is to be able to consider some of those practical pieces, because ultimately we don't have control over the weather as much as I wish we did, but we don't. A bit like Teresa, I don't watch the news at all. Like, but and again for that because of the impact on news, but the weather reports I do keep an eye on. Um, and then in relation to the sensory issues around feeling cold, so I'm not going to go down into sensory issues per se, but I'm a cold fish, right? I'm always freezing, always freezing. So I've a few things that I do, especially when it comes to the winter, the likes of like I've extra base layers and that I might put on. Anyone who knows me, I always have a hot water bottle hanging around somewhere. And I suppose that's my way of, even if it means when I'm going down to the car in the mornings, on really cold mornings, I'll bring my hot water bottle with me because I find the hot water bottle, it's non-invasive to anybody else. And it's me just looking after me. So I'm keeping warm and toasty. So, like, they're two, I suppose, small examples. But there, I suppose, what I'd say to the person who asked the question are there are loads of different things, and I suppose maybe perhaps if there was a little bit of time to give a little bit of thought to what might they be for you, and you'll be amazed what comes up. So I hope that's helpful.
Brilliant. Thanks, Noeleen, and thanks, Teresa. Carol, do you want to come in? Are you happy enough?
Yeah, just to top it up, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not saying people should stockpile, but if there's anxiety about the weather and there's potential for shops to be, emptied of the bread and the milk and all that kind of stuff, it's that maybe just have that in mind just to be prepared, I suppose. And then also with the fuel, depends what fuel you have in your house. If you need to buy in some briquettes or whatever, have them ready, accessible. I'm even chatting to my wife. My wife does tend to get a little bit anxious around that kind of stuff around this time of year with the weather and stuff. If the electricity goes, that kind of stuff, have candles, have those things ready, accessible, not hidden somewhere where you can't find them. We have a little box outside the back which our dog used to use, and I'm probably going to put some briquettes in there and some bits and bobs so I don't have to go too far out into the cold. And then to add to Noeleen's, I love the hot water bottle piece. That's no brainer for someone who's out in the cold like I would be out running. But we tend to when myself and my wife share them. We buy the box of 10 little hand warmer things from Decathlon. They're cheap and cheerful. You shake them and they come alive. I was out the weekend. I used them on Sunday. You put them in your pocket. They last for about 8 hours. I know it's a practical solution, but you could also put them in your shoes and stuff. So again, it's base layers. Yeah, it's base layers. It's woolly hats. Like I said, I'm a runner, so I have many layers on, and I have my running gloves. And straight after I do a run, it's tracksuit bottoms on, and it's a nice warm hat, and there's a cup of coffee. But yeah, it's those little. They can help. It's a bit of preparation, I suppose. That can help. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Carol. We'll move on to hopefully that answers that question for the individual that asked. So that's great. So will we look? I know we kind of talked about slowing down and maybe resetting in the winter time. So the question I'm going to ask, how do we remind ourselves of that? Is there anything we can do, I suppose, to pause in the day? I know there's a little discussion around that or to reflect as well. How can we remind ourselves that it's okay to slow down and reset in the winter time? Teresa, will I go to yourself first? Will that be okay?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Like there is, I think Noeleen spoke to this earlier. There is a biological rhythm. So humans are naturally, going to slow down in the winter anyway, because we all spoke, I think, to the serotonin levels dropping and melatonin levels rising. So we do get tired, and that's a fact. And we do lean into probably more unhealthy diets because it's comfort food. And we probably, a lot of people do gain weight. So I think it's kind of almost a radical act if you reject busyness. And I think that winter is an opportunity to embrace a lot more depth in everything around us in terms of relationships, in terms of creativity, in terms of time. And what I'm talking about there is that, and the women aren't going to like this, but multitasking is a myth. Our brains can't actually multitask. All they do is they manage things together and fool us into believing that we are multitasking. What we're doing is we're actually spreading out attention. And our focus is less on each activity. So there's less quality in our output. And I suppose what I would be thinking is that if we slow down in our relationships, in our conversations, in our projects, in our self-care, and that can be anything from having a bath to going for a walk to talking to a friend on the phone. Those connections, those taking notice, those being active, when we go back to the 5 ways to wellbeing, they all become much richer and much deeper. So if we are willing to actually go with the flow of what nature is asking of us, and if we lean in with the rhythm that exists in winter, we are going to experience a much richer life in that time span. And if you think about our ancestors, they all kind of sat around lighting fires, and the welcome the light, Diwali festival welcomes the light, and Christmas lights welcome the light. There's a reason for all of that, and it is human nature. If you look at anthropology and the history of how humans kind of interact with their environment at seasonal times, they are welcoming in, they are preparing, they are readying themselves, but they're also accepting that this is and I think you can hold the light and hold the spark in a conversation, in a connection with yourself, in a good book, in a deep dive into maybe a hobby or something that you love. Do you see what I'm saying? I think it can be a metaphorical piece there, but it can become a real reality and space in your life.
Brilliant. Thanks, Teresa. Any thoughts from Carol or Noeleen? Are we happy to? Noeleen, do you want to come in?
Yeah, there's a few practical things that I'm thinking about there because I suppose like I can very easily get caught up in the tide of the busyness and all of that that's going on. And I suppose there's a few things that I've done over the years because there's busyness, there's life, there's family life, there's lifts, there's food to be cooked, there's work to be done, there's 41 million jobs, there's a mental load, and there's so much going on. And I suppose for me to figure out how do I carve out a little bit of time just for me. And I find that if I get up a little bit earlier in the morning, I carve out a little bit of time. It's only maybe 10, 15 minutes. And that's just to lean in and do what it is that I need to do for me. So I like to do a little bit of meditation in the mornings because I find that that does set me up for the day. And also some stretching and stuff like that because, again, we're sitting more, we're stationary more, or we're running and like eating on the way. So there's certain things that I like to do at certain times. I've a little alarm that's built in that my watch goes off at 1 o'clock every day. And again, it's just the noise of the alarm reminds me just to literally take a breath and catch my breath. And I remember a few years ago, somebody recommended breath dots. I don't know if anyone's heard of breath dots. And those little red dots that you see on like for sale, or like when you're in like an exhibition, and and people stick on the dots to say that they're sold. I remember somebody a few years ago said, put breath dots around the place. So anywhere you see them, it could be on the dash of your car, it could be on the mirror in your bathroom, it could be on the kettle. So every time you see it, then take a minute just to catch your breath and see where you are and check where you're breathing from. So I know if I'm breathing from here, I'm not in, right? And sometimes it is a case of literally just 30 seconds to catch where I'm breathing and then just to consciously breathe to get back in. And that centers me and it grounds me. So I suppose just by way of just sharing some of those practical little things that might help us reconnect with ourselves amongst the busyness and amongst the, the days.
Brilliant. That's great, Noeleen. I like that idea. Karl, you want to come in there?
Yeah, just I suppose it's all really great nuggets. I think there's two things I would think about. Slowing down and to rest. It's like to reframe it as being productive. So it's a recharge. And I know we're talking about going into the seasonal change, and I know we're going to be coming up to we have Halloween and then we have Christmas, and people are still working and people are still out there doing stuff and volunteering. But there is a time to kind of have a piece to reflect, and it's probably to that Danish concept, and how you pronounce it is up for grabs, but it's Hugu or Higgy or Hygge, Hugu. It's like it's lovely. Noeleen mentioned it. It's the setting up the cozy, the warm. It's the comfort food. It's all that self-care, self-compassion. And it's also around the green living, outdoors. They have the benefit of having great cycle lanes, but it's all of that great, good stuff. But what I love about that concept is it's all about not boasting and not promoting yourself, and it's being, avoiding meaningless small talk. Small talk is great in its right frame of mind, but it's about having those great, deep, good conversations, not just surface level conversations. But then I suppose that's the seasonal piece, and that's kind of bedding down and closing out the year, and I love it, and it's great to have like Netflix days or Harry Potter days or warm, back to the hot water bottle and snuggle down popcorn and that kind of great stuff over the Christmas period, if possible, if you can. It depends on how your day and your work is or your time. But I suppose that the other one that for me always gets me, and this is probably for the 12 months of the year, is around the 168 hours we have every week, right? So that's kind of like the concept of that breaks down into like typically the average person, whatever an average person is, works for 56 hours and commutes for 56 hours, works to combine working and commuting 56 hours, sleeps hopefully for 56 hours, and then the other 56 hours is up for grabs. So it's like what you do with your spare time and what you do with your hobbies and your family and friends. So it's around looking at that, maybe there's some stuff online you can look at. You can pull down a simple worksheet, you can fill it out, and you can figure out then at the end of it when you've filled it out is whether you have time for more activities or you have to pull back and you're absolutely maxed out and you've got time for less. You got to pull back, you got to think inward, you got to look at what's good for me and what's good for my family or my friends around me. If I'm not functioning well, if I'm not performing well, am I overdoing it? So I think that's a good time at any time of the year, to be honest with you, to reflect. But maybe this seasonal change piece is a great time to look, stop, pause, think. How am I spending my week? And am I absolutely maxed out, or do I have time for more connections and hobbies and outdoor and indoor activities? Yeah, so it's a good time to reflect.
Brilliant. That's great, Karl. It's time for reflection, is what I'm gathering for that. So really, really good. We have a question in there, and I'll come to it now, and hopefully we'll be able to answer it. So I'll read it out. So the question is, we provide workspaces for remote workers. I find that they change their work patterns in the winter months, and they tend to work from home more than come into the hubs and connect with people. Often they come back and I notice a change in their mood, positivity. We host events on a monthly basis, lunchtime talks. So the question is there any tips on how we can encourage them to come into the shared workplaces or any events you have seen that could work really well for this new cohort of workers? So it's kind of like remote workers and trying to get them into the connecting with their colleagues, I'm sure. Is there any kind of ideas you'd have? Anyone? Will I throw it out to the panelists if anyone wants to answer?
Right.
I
Carl?
Sorry. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, go on,
Yeah,
Carl. No, go.
yeah, go first.
no, I'll jump straight in. Just thinking off the spur of the top of my head is, like call it what you want. Give it a name, like give it a coffee chat, or call it what you want. But it would be a concept whereby you would have a 30-minute meeting over coffee or over croissants or tea, with no agenda. So it's like a getting to know you again. So it's just really getting to understand not just what you did at the weekend, but tell me more about you. What are you up to these days? It's about being curious. I know we're all work colleagues and we all know what we do and we all know what areas we cover, etc. And we kind of know what we did at the weekend, but this is probably the next level down. And that's one option. I suppose another one I would think of would be the face-to-face mentoring program you could put in place, of whether the company has one already. I know mentoring circles and mentoring connections can be done online, obviously, but the face-to-face is quite powerful. And again, come with no agenda. It's an open book in terms of what you want to bring to it. Typically, a mentee would bring a topic that they want help with, or yeah, to want help with or support with, and a mentor would be able to guide and direct them. But maybe make it an open kind of connection. So yeah, I don't know. There's two ideas. Maybe the lunch connections are good, the coffee sessions are good, but I do feel the mentoring connections are quite strong as well. So.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Noeleen, were you going to come in? Thank
Yeah,
you.
I was just going to say to the person who asked the question to get in touch with us because there's one of us all throughout Ireland and we'd be happy to have a chat with you and support you as best we can because we have tons of different ideas, as Carl mentioned there. There's two, but we've a lot of more, we've a lot more as well. And we'd be happy to support as best we can.
Brilliant. Thanks, Noeleen. We can give our emails at the end as well if needed. That's probably the best thing,
Perfect.
or just signpost to the web or mention
Yeah,
it there on the
and I'd
website.
just like to
Teresa,
add,
yeah.
I'd just like to row in as well, just in terms of we do have tons of ideas, and one of them is the Hello, How Are You campaign.
Mhm.
And it can be it's marked for a certain time of year, but it's something that you can internalize and do with the staff, and it's really great because it's kind of face-to-face conversation and there's huge amount of resource, loads of training, and it's very simple engagement, peace, and connection. There's also the Connect Cafe model, which is fantastic. And the unique feature of that is that you speak uninterrupted. Every single person in the room speaks uninterrupted for 1 minute. And you tailor the questions, or the group tailor the questions amongst themselves. So again, it's a kind of a free-for-all space where they decide. But what I think it brings is a reminder. And I spoke to a guy actually in one of the big pharma organizations that he ran. There's over 1,000 employees. And he said to me, sometimes, and he didn't mean it arrogantly, he said, sometimes people really don't know what's good for them. And he said, I saw it with loads of the staff. They're at home and they think they're better there and they think they're more productive. And they kind of get into a state of, oh, I don't want to meet anybody. And he said, and they come in and within a couple of hours, they're buzzing. And, I do think that is true for all of us. We kind of get in ruts. And again, the challenge is there. I wouldn't deny it for a second, but I think there's definitely ways around it, and do get in touch with it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Teresa. We're coming close to the end, so I'm going to throw out one question for you. So, and then I'm going to share the signposting slides. So, what's upcoming in Mental Health Ireland? And then the question is, what would be your final piece of advice to the audience who are struggling with seasonal changes? So, Carol, I go to yourself first, if you can, if that's okay.
Yeah, struggling with season. Yeah, I suppose, I tend to read a lot and I tend to pull nuggets and I take quotes and I bring them and I kind of bring them to life. But I read a book, I'm reading a book right now, it's beside my bed, called Shift Happens by Robert Hayden. I think it's Robert Hayden. And one of the quotes comes from the book, is the personal assistant of the Dalai Lama said, empty your bowl of yesterday's rice. So I like that. I like that, and I kind of have that's been sitting here for ages, and now I'll bring it up in various chats that I have with people. But that to me really kind of talks about just move forward, obviously, but like not forget about the stuff that's happened, but just put it to one side and just go I suppose compartmentalize it and, bring it back when you need it, but go forward. Think of what's coming up now for you in the next day, the next week, the next month. And again, like back to that, your time management piece is very important. Yeah, we're going into the dark months and just have a plan. I mean, maybe like I touched on earlier, is think about a new winter sport that you might want to get involved in. Think about a new group you might want to get involved in. That could be indoors, that could be online chess, it could be online bridge. It could be anything of that ilk. It doesn't necessarily have to be outdoors, albeit absolutely if you can get outdoors, try and get out as much as you possible. Have a look at the weather app and make sure you don't get caught in the storms or the rain, but have your protective clothing on. Back to the old thing about it's not about the weather, it's about the clothes you wear, that kind of stuff. My son went on a day off from college on Monday. He went up to Glendalough and I think he nearly got sunburned because it was a crisp September day. But he had a backpack on him, he had his bag and he had his food and he had all his bits and pieces. So yeah, it's about the prep. But yeah, so look, there's a ton of stuff. And I think actually, Teresa, you called it out there, but we have a ton of stuff that we can share. And Cillian, you obviously work in the area and you shared a lot with the good folks of your communities and your areas. But there's so much great stuff from the chats we have about the 5 ways to well-being in terms of what works for you really, I suppose, is what's best. It's a time to self-reflect and a time to think what works for me. Yeah, so it's a good time of the year just to sit and think.
Super. Thanks, Karl. Teresa, welcome to yourself. One piece of advice. Just on mute there, Teresa. Sorry, yeah. Right.
Line. I found a little line that I wanted to read to you. So, reframing does not deny the problem's existence. It just denies the problem a place of influence. So I think that is really powerful. And from my point of view, I would have heard that maybe said in other different ways. But that's what I think is really important, that we hear things in different ways. We tune in and we go, oh, I know that. But when we hear it in a different way, I think it's that idea of when the student's ready, the teacher appears. It comes with a different meaning. I mean, I walk my dogs for an hour most days, and I really don't feel the same if I don't do it, and neither do they. They get very destructive. But you know what I mean? So there's something about the experience of being outside and taking notice and engaging in nature. I do walk them in beautiful areas deliberately so that I can engage. It's not just their walk, it's my walk. And I think that reframing, again, Karl talked about it, layering, preparation, they're the practicalities. But also, can I just throw a little test out for you? I don't know if there's research on this, but I think there might be. Light a candle, okay, and just sit in the dark with the candle for a little while and see what happens. I'm not saying anything will happen, but I am telling you now, the darkness is actually supports a lot of creativity. And that's not something we would immediately line up with. That's not something we immediately make a connection with. But um, I was going to throw in like Jane Austen wrote in the dark. So that's just me making something up. But seriously, experience that. Have that experience of just sitting in the dark with a candle and just see what happens. Just observe yourself. And that's my little takeaway.
Brilliant, Teresa. Thanks very much. And Noeleen, I'll just finally come to yourself and then I'll share the
I'll keep it
signposting
short because
slides.
I'm,
Thank
I'm very
you.
mindful of the time.
Thank you.
I suppose in terms of stepping in at the demands, and I suppose what I would say is it's okay to say no, because when we say no to something, we're actually saying yes to ourselves. So I'm going to leave my final thought with, and I've mentioned it already, go gentle, lean in, and it's okay to say no.
Brilliant. Thanks, Noeleen. While I'm getting the slides up, I just want to thank all the attendees, my panelists as well. Great discussion. It's been really good just to hear your perspectives on the topic, building resilience through seasonal change. We've had a good few attendees and they stuck right till the end, which is lovely as well. So I'm just going to share the final couple of slides just on upcoming events that are happening. So we have Mental Health Month coming up next month in October. So all this information is on the Mental Health Ireland website. To book any of the events are on the Mental Health Ireland Eventbrite page. So we have a webinar series upcoming. So there's winter wellness webinars. There is The Irish Men's Shed, we're a partnership with them on a men's health webinar, family cares as well. There'll be a webinar with them, Crown Paints as well around color, and then Baxter Story as well around nutrition. So lots of collaborations there going around with the webinars. Then we're having a choir event on the 10th of October in Dublin, which is Choral Connections. Then there's a fundraiser as well around the month of October called Move It. More information, I can give my email as well if you want on that for more information on that, or else on the Mental Health Ireland's website as well. You can find information. On our website as well, there'll be a What's On page as well of what's upcoming on around not just my region, but Karl, Noeleen, and Teresa and other development officers' region as well of what's coming around nationally as well. So, and that marks the 10th of October as well, World Mental Health Day. So lots going on. So have a look at our website, mentalhealthireland.ie. And then we have our workshops, which would be step one, engage with mental health, an introduction to mental health and well-being, and talking about the 5 ways to well-being. Karl mentioned it earlier on. Step two then would be expand your well-being toolkit and understanding of mental health, well-being, and stress management. And then the third one is talk about what matters, which is navigating meaningful conversations around mental health. And yeah, that is the workshops that we offer. So again, myself, Karl, Noeleen, and Teresa offer these in the community as well. So if you have more information, even if I'll put it to the panelists if they want to put their email or shout their email in a second just to share that. Then our next campaign after October is Connectmas, which is around Christmas time. So it's a lovely one as well. So donate as well, fundraise. There'll be more information over the coming weeks after we get through October for Mental Health Month as well. So that's Connectmas that's upcoming in December. And that is that. So again, thanks a million, everybody. Karl, do you want to give your email maybe just to before that's okay?
Yeah,
And then Noeleen as well, and then Teresa, if anyone wants
yeah,
to
perfect.
contact you.
I'll put into chat if you like as well. I can mention Karl with a K, karl.spain@mentalhealthireland.ie.
Lovely. Thanks, Karl. Noeleen,
So it's Noeleen. So as it appears on screen, Noeleen at, and same as Karl, mentalhealthireland.ie.
brilliant. Thanks a million. And Teresa, you just put into the chat there as well. Great. Thank you. If you want to shout as
Yeah, I
well.
just popped it. So it's Teresa Keane and then the big long draggy mentalhealthireland.ie.
Brilliant. Thanks a million. And my email is Cillian with a C at mentalhealthireland.ie. So we'll leave it there. So thanks again to all the attendees. This will, like I mentioned at the start, will be recorded for the Mental Health Ireland YouTube channel. But great to have you there. Hopefully you enjoyed the discussion and we'll chat again soon. So thanks a million. See you soon.
Thanks, folks.
Thank
Bye.
you.